Hi, are you currently dealing with habits that you consciously know are harmful and unproductive to you, yet you try to change them but it never works, and so as a result you're stuck in this loop of constantly repeating behaviors that you dislike? Well, if that's the case, please keep on watching because this video is for you. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Katrin and in this channel I will be discussing many topics that are related to psychology, general health and well-being, as well as self-development. So if those topics are something that is interesting to you, please consider subscribing and giving my video a like. Also, the topic of today's video in particular would be how to finally stop self-sabotaging and start living a more healthy and happy lifestyle, start detoxing your life as well. So please continue on watching, and without further ado, let's jump right into today's video. I would start off by saying something that nobody would be genuinely surprised by, which is that unfortunately nowadays most people live an unhealthy, unproductive lifestyle, a lifestyle filled with habits that are slowly taking away their time, their energy, their health, their well-being. And unfortunately, nowadays it is easier than ever to engage in the so-called highly dopaminergic activities, which I will discuss in a second. And highly dopaminergic activities can be anything from eating fast food to playing video games mindlessly or scrolling through social media for hours. And what those habits are, it's activities that actually trigger directly dopamine release in your brain without you having to put too much effort into them. So activities that are easy to sustain, yet they trigger substantial dopamine release. Now, I would like to give you a bit of a background as to what I'm talking about in neurological terms. So first of all, dopamine, what is it exactly? It is the neurotransmitter that is responsible for reward and pleasure. And this neurotransmitter is already naturally produced in your brain. It is acting as a messenger from one neuron to another, and it is produced in many different brain areas, but mostly in the so-called substantia nigra. And this area is part of the basal ganglia, another brain area. And it is actually the brain area that is directly harmed in Parkinson's disease. So if you have a relative or another person who you know who is suffering from Parkinson's disease, then you would know that this is a neurodegenerative disorder, and those people who are struggling with Parkinson's disease, they have motor development, motor problems, and actually it is the substantia nigra that is targeted and directly their dopamine production. So they have too low of levels of dopamine in their brain, and that's what is causing their motor problems. But also too much of dopamine release is also not a good thing. So the dopamine release really has to be at specific levels in order for you to function properly and to be healthy. Now I would also like to tell you a bit more about an experiment that was done in the scientific field that I really like, and it is called the rat park. The rat park is an experiment in which researchers placed rats into different groups. One group, the rats were placed into a horrible environment where they were lonely, they had no access to other rats, they had zero activities that were fun to them. So basically they were put into horrible conditions that they highly disliked. And another group of rats was placed into the rat park, which was a park where they had access to other rats, they had access to another fun activities, and genuinely they were very much liking those conditions. So in both conditions, the rats were given two types of water that they could choose from. One type of water was the plain, normal, drinkable water, and the other type of water was actually drug-laced water. I believe they laced it with cocaine, but I'm not entirely sure. And in the first condition, the condition in which the rats were in a horrible environment that they didn't like and they were feeling lonely and sad, they heavily overdosed. So they preferred the water that was drug-laced, and also there were many cases of overdosing on the drugs. Whereas in the other condition, where the rats were placed into the rat park and they were generally happy and very healthy, they didn't go for the drug-laced water almost at all. Those rats highly preferred to drink the normal plain water, and there were very, very few cases, if none, if not even none, of rats overdosing in those conditions. So now that I gave you the context of the experiment, I would actually like to talk about its implications. So the first implication that is generally spoken a lot about when people are discussing this experiment is the fact that when you are already in good conditions and when you are already happy and fulfilled, resisting bad temptations is much easier. So it is people and animals that are already in bad conditions that are more likely to actually engage with those temptations, with those bad and negative habits, because they're lacking fulfillment in many aspects. So temptation is much easier to resist when you are in healthy and happy circumstances. However, a second thing that I also like to take from this experiment is the fact that the rats in the experiment didn't have any autonomy over their own lives. They didn't have any choice. They were basically put in either the first or the second condition completely randomly. The researchers were the one who chose which rat goes where, and the rats didn't have any control over their circumstances and environment. And I actually would like to say and to suggest that with people it is a bit similar in certain aspects because, well, people are born into random families. Some people are born into poverty and born into horrible circumstances where they are, for example, abused or beaten. And other people, other children, they're born into amazing families that give them lots of prospective opportunities. For example, families that have money and have access towards to different opportunities. For example, the child might be able to play music experiments or to experiment with different sports. So people are randomly assigned to those conditions in life as well. And we as well do not choose our initial circumstances. However, the difference between the experiment and real life for humans is the fact that after a certain period of time has passed and a child has developed into adult, we adults already have a lot more autonomy and a lot more choices and a lot more control over our own environment. So we have the opportunity to build it the way that we want it. So it is obviously the case that some people who are born into poverty stay into poverty, but there are examples of people who are born into poverty, born into horrible conditions, raised in abusive environments, and yet they show resilience and they show how with time they develop autonomy and they start making good choices for themselves, choices that take them away from those bad conditions. For example, they cut ties with bad influences, they make new friendships with better people, they try to live healthily, they try to sustain their happiness, and it is really admirable how those people manage to escape from the circumstances that they were initially in. And obviously the opposite is also unfortunately a fact, that some children who were born into wealthy and good families that were raised, fed with a silver spoon in their mouths, some of those children also fall victims to like bad circumstances later on in their lives because they made specific choices in their lives that led them there. And you can go from either extreme to the other extreme with personal choices once you reach a certain age and you have autonomy. And that is something that I always like to emphasize, the importance of personal choice, because we do have a lot of personal choice, obviously not fully. Some people might at one point develop a specific disorder or have other life circumstances being thrown in their faces, and we all have to take that and do the best we can with the cards that we're dealt. But we do have a lot more choice and a lot more control than the rats in the experiment. So it is not that dooming if you are currently in the bad circumstances. There is a way out in almost all cases. Now that I have spoken about that, about the fact that you are not doomed, even if you're currently having bad habits or living in bad environment, you're not doomed. Now I would actually like to share with you what I think is one of the biggest mistakes when it comes to people who are trying to make a positive change and trying to stick with new habits and new routines. And it is the fact that people tend to overwhelm themselves, and people tend to look for fast results. So they tend to make too drastic of changes all at once and look for ways that they can substantially improve their life in a matter of as little time as possible. But it's not actually the wise way to do things. And the reason is the following. Imagine that you have currently, up till now, you have done 0 sports for the last 3 years. And now all of a sudden you want to get into doing sports again. And you decide that you want to run every morning, and you set up the alarm clock for earlier next morning so that you can wake up and find time in the day where you would be running. But maybe you can stick with that habit for like 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month. But most people don't even last 1 week when they make this decision. And the reason is that your everyday life is already filled up with so many things. Like you have probably other relatives that you take care of, children or maybe family members. You also have a job that you're doing, most probably you also are doing 15 more things during your everyday life. So your schedule is filled with things, and it is unfortunately very hard to add additional things to what you're already doing and what you're already tackling. So what do I suggest as a cure to this problem? It is actually simple. I suggest boredom as cure for this. And hear me out. So you're already very, very busy. Your life is already filled with so many things that you barely have any time for yourself. So what I suggest is that instead of the traditional advice that we are given, which is, oh, do more sports, eat healthily, prepare your own food, go to the grocery store, buy good things for yourself, do this and that. No, instead of doing this and that, I suggest you take away things from your plate. So think about all the bad habits that you're currently having in your everyday life that are taking away your time, because time is really precious. Time is extremely precious. So instead of filling your schedule with too many things to a point in which you cannot stick with those habits because it just feels like too much, it feels exhausting. Instead of doing that, just think about what you can take away from your schedule and how you can empty your schedule a bit so that you can create this time when you are feeling bored. And why do I suggest that? Well, it's simple. Think about the following example. So imagine a child is being placed into a room, and in this room it has access to all its favorite activities, all those highly dopaminergic activities that it can be doing. For example, it has access to video games, it has access to social media, to fast food, many things. So it has the opportunity to choose between all those things that are to a certain extent harmful to it. Okay, well, think about it, and then think about what would happen if you want to make this child read a book. Let's say that in this room that was previously filled with all those things, you now implement a bookshelf with books. And you say, well, choose what you want to do. And the child would obviously not go for the bookshelf. It would obviously go for the things that are already very interesting to it and are very highly dopaminergic, and the things that it was already doing. So it wouldn't pick up a book. Now think about what would happen in case you force it to read this book. So you basically remove everything else from the room and you leave just the bookshelf and you say, now you read. Well, it also wouldn't have a good outcome. Why? Because previously, just like a moment ago, this child was playing those favorite video games of its. And now you're forcing it to read the book. And it's making this instant comparison between what it was already doing, which was playing video games and enjoying it, to what it now has to do. So it feels like a chore. It feels like something that it's not consciously choosing, but something that is forced upon it. And nobody likes that. However, think about a different scenario. Think about you take away all those things from the room and leave the child there in this fully empty room for a while. Now, what this would create is a sense of boredom, obviously. The child has nothing to do. It's in a fully empty room. And think about what would happen if this child stays there for 1 or 2 days. Just 1 or 2 days of staying in this empty room, having nothing to do. What this would create is a sense of boredom. And boredom, as Tolstoy said, boredom is the desire for desires. So this child would all of a sudden have a desire to do something. And now imagine in this exact same situation, you now return the bookshelf to the room. And you now give it the option to read books. It could either stay and be bored, or it could go and pick up a book from the bookshelf and read that. Now the child would be much more inclined to pick up the book and read it, because it would be comparing the book with the previous state, which was complete boredom. And the book is obviously better than being absolutely bored. And when the child picks it up, it would actually become interested in what it's reading, because what it's reading is alleviating it from the sense of boredom. So that's why I suggest that you first choose which habits from your everyday life. You make a list of all the things that you're doing on an everyday basis, and you first choose which of those things you want to get rid of. Do you, for example, scroll on social media for 1 or 2 hours a day? Well, maybe you would like to get rid of that habit. Or do you go out of your way to eat junk food, go to the grocery store to buy it, whatever? Then maybe you can get rid of that habit as well. So, but just think about it in terms of getting rid of things that you're already doing. For now, don't think at all about what you would like to do, because it would become too much, it would become too overwhelming. Just think about how you can relieve yourself from some of the things that you're currently doing that are habits that you don't want to continue any longer. And of course, after you have successfully implemented what I just said, you have successfully removed habits from your everyday life that you are currently doing, and you have successfully created those time frames, periods of time in which you have nothing to do and in which you're feeling bored. Now that you have successfully done that, this would automatically, I guarantee you, create this sense of like desire for desires, and this would naturally lead you towards wanting to implement new habits and wanting to implement those healthy habits that you already know you want to incorporate in your life. For example, running in the morning, or preparing healthy food, or whatever it is that you're currently struggling with implementing. But by creating this time frame, you would now have the time and now have the energy to tackle this and to actually stick with it. So just think about removing things and don't think about adding them so much. It would naturally follow. Also, this ties really well with another quote by Sigmund Freud, which is that we can never give up. We simply exchange one thing for another. So by you trying to get in this state of boredom, you're actually playing with exactly that. You wouldn't be able to fully give up and to just stay in constant boredomness 24/7, no. But in those periods of time which you do have some free time and you have nothing to do, you would simply exchange what you were already doing then, for example, playing video games or scrolling through social media, whatever it is, the habit that you have gotten rid of. And now you would have this time frame in which you would exchange this habit for a healthy one. But because you were previously feeling bored, you wouldn't make the constant comparison of, oh, I was just a minute ago scrolling on social media, and now all of a sudden I have to cook healthy meal. Why is that? You wouldn't have the time to actually make the comparison, because the comparison would be between you being absolutely bored in the time that you have cleared out and you having the opportunity to cook for yourself a healthy meal. And now all of a sudden those habits that don't sound that interesting and intriguing would actually sound great because they're better than nothing. And so essentially what I am suggesting is that you do a full life detox. Just detox yourself from all the harmful habits that you are constantly doing, and this would lead to a much healthier routine and habits. I wouldn't focus too much now on saying which specific habits you can get rid of, because I think that it is a general knowledge. It wouldn't be a surprise to anyone if I say, well, don't scroll on social media, or don't have too much, don't use your phone too much, and turn off your lights before going to sleep so that you would have a better sleep. Those things are pretty obvious. I would say 99% of people wouldn't be surprised at all to listen about that. So I wouldn't spend time thinking and talking about it, but I do want to say something that is a bit less spoken about, because when it comes to general health and well-being, we all know what the good and the bad habits are. But actually, I think in the social domain, it hasn't been spoken about that much. So habits that are socially draining you out of your energy and are socially causing you harm, and habits that I would suggest you tackle first, because they're very much easier to tackle and to get rid of if you consciously put effort into that. So such habits are, for example, oversharing with people. If you're constantly oversharing with people who you cannot fully trust, stop doing that. Also, stop overly excusing yourself and being overly apologetic and explanatory about why you want to do something and why you don't want to do something. Stop being too much of a people pleaser, also a very self-explanatory one. And most importantly, cut out bad influences. Cut out ties with people who you feel are dragging you down, because social influence is a huge topic that I would be discussing more in upcoming videos, but social influence is really important. If you are keeping people who are going to be dragging you down, it would be substantially harder for you to get rid of the unhealthy habits that you have. For example, if you are currently drinking a lot of alcohol and this is one of the habits in your list that you want to get rid of, this would also come with getting rid of people who are forcing you to drink alcohol, if there are any people like that in your life. For example, if you're going out many evenings, you're going out with people who constantly drink and who constantly force you to drink, then it would be very hard for you to stop drinking. So think about that, and think about it being really important that you remove people from your surrounding that are dragging you back to the habits that you want to cut out on. Because you cannot improve your life if you're keeping ties with people who aren't going into the same direction as you. So that's something that I wanted to put out there. Think about social aspects, think about the people around you, think about how you are treating the people around you. Are you being overly apologetic? Are you being too much of a people pleaser? Think about those things and get rid of them, because they would substantially increase your chances of sticking to a healthy routine in all the other domains of your life as well, psychologically and also based off of general health and well-being. Now, the final portion of this video, I would actually like to dedicate towards giving you advice on how to find the best sport for you. So this portion of the video is for the people who have already successfully done what I suggested and have successfully made some free time for themselves, successfully have gotten rid of some of their bad habits, and now they want to find a sport and they want to stick with doing this sport. So actually, I want to tell you that if you are thinking that you are very lazy or you are not a person who likes and enjoys sports, you are wrong. You are wrong. Most probably, it is just a matter of you not having found the best sport for you. Because if you haven't found the right sport and you have just experimented with sports that didn't really click, that's why you didn't stick with them. But in this portion of the video, I would tell you how to find the best sport for you. And if you do find the best sport for you, I promise you 100% that you would naturally want to do it. Because you would naturally feel so great and so refreshed and so energized after doing this sport that it would be highly, highly addictive, even in the best sense of the word, of course. So stick with me if you want to find out how to find the best sport. I suggest the following way. You first think about sports in terms of broad categories. So the first broad category that you want to think about is the environment that the sport is played at. So is it an indoor sport? Is it an outdoor sport? And is it a sport that is played on the ground? Is it a snow sport, a water sport, or an air sport? And air sports are a bit less common, of course. But think about the environment. In what environment would you find yourself most drawn to? Maybe you have so far only experimented with ground sports. You have played football, you have played basketball, volleyball, whatever it was, but it never really stuck with you because you're actually much more drawn towards water sports. And once you go into a water sport, you actually enjoy it so much. So think about the environment. Which environment are you most drawn to? Then think about the activity type. Is it a team sport? Is it an individual sport? After you have figured out that, you can think about all types of activity. Is it a ball sport? Is it a martial arts? Is it dance type of sport? Is it maybe, I don't know, adventurous sport, extreme sport such as rock climbing? Is it perhaps a mind-body sport such as yoga? Think about all those broad categories. Then think about the third type of broad categories, which are the form of exercise. What is it exactly that you want to exercise? Do you want to have cardiovascular training maybe? Do you want to have a strength training? Do you want to have a flexibility or mobility training? Do you want to improve on your balance and your coordination? Think about all those things. And now that you have figured out the broad categories that you want your sport to fall into, you can now go to any AI tool, such as ChatGPT, for example, and ask it and just type, which sport falls into these categories? And you just say which categories it is that you like. For example, if you want to have a sport that is in the air environment, so a less common one, but you also want it to be in the mind-body domain and you want it to be an individual sport that also really trains your flexibility and your mobility, then aerial yoga is a perfect sport for you because it combines all those things that you're already interested in. So just give it a try, give aerial yoga a try, and you would most probably enjoy it a lot. Think about, for example, if you want to experiment with something less common, let's say a water sport that is also a team sport and that is in the dance domain and that works on your body movement and improves your coordination and balance, then maybe synchronized swimming might be a great option for you. So think about all those broad categories, combine them and find the perfect sport for you. But also another thing that I want to put out there is do keep in mind about the feasibility of that. Because, for example, if you live in a very warm environment where there is no snow, it wouldn't be wise to go for a snow sport, of course. So just think about the feasibility. Think about it also in terms of money investment, because some sports tend to be very expensive, other sports tend to be much cheaper. And I really, really encourage you to do that. Because I promise you that if you find the right sport for you, you would be naturally drawn to it and you would naturally want to spend more of your time doing it. It's not a matter of being lazy, it's in many cases a matter of not having found the correct type of movement for yourself. And yeah, this was all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something out of it and you found new information that you hadn't previously thought about. If that was the case, please consider liking this video, sharing it with other people who might also benefit from it, and also subscribing to my channel so that you don't miss out on future videos. And I thank you so much for your time and for sticking with me until the end of this video, and I wish you a great day. Bye bye!